All right, good evening, everyone. Hope all is well. My name is Keisha Golden Cooper, and I'm the Director of Guidance for Teaneck Public Schools. And welcome to our first, officially our first, right? Our first webinar parent session of the 2021-2022 school year. I hope all is well with you and your families as we are starting this awesome school year. And tonight I have two of the six dynamic and awesome and all of those superlatives that I could go on and talk about with two of our dynamic counselors with us this evening, Ms. Jennifer Taylor and Ms. Charisma Bettis, formerly Ms. Mitchell. We are here tonight and they are going to walk you through the senior parent, and it's really for parents and students, and an opportunity to first hear about the college application process and some noted points for you to be aware of. And then the second portion of this evening, we will be joined by Ms. Smith from Seton Hall University. She's the Assistant Director of Financial Aid, and she's going to talk to you and to us about financial aid and all you need to know about FAFSA. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Taylor and Ms. Bettis as they walk you through this evening. So take care, and I will be back.
Thank you, Ms. Cooper. Welcome, everybody. I know, thanks for joining us on this evening. I know everybody's always very busy, but we're happy to have you here. And just to tell you a little bit about what your seniors should be expecting and doing in the coming weeks and months in terms of senior year and post-high school planning. I'm Jennifer Taylor. I've been at the high school for quite some time. And for those of you who don't know me, or you should know me by now if you have me as a parent, but we have not been around, so it is hard, and we're getting reacquainted with all of our students and trying to recognize everybody with masks on. And I keep asking kids to forgive me if I don't know exactly who they are when they come in the room, because it's been quite a while, but it's really wonderful to be back in the office with them and sitting and talking. And I've met with quite a few. We all have about their plans for next year. And this seems to be a great senior class. They're on top of things. They remember our presentations from junior year, and we're just carrying that forward. So let me go ahead and start. And at any time you can type a question in the chat and we'll answer it later. And at the end as well, and this presentation will be posted so that you can use it as a reference. Okay, so this is just the counseling department. It's a nice little picture of all of us. You've met our director. This is actually that one picture. A couple of them were taken right before the pandemic without masks, which was nice. So we have Ms. Charisma Bettis, Mr. Doug Book, Ms. Beth Fleischer, Ms. Lillian Garcia, Mr. Calvin Reese, and myself, Ms. Jennifer Taylor. Our wonderful administrative staff is Ms. Kim Dockery and Ms. Sheila Moore. And they are always available at the front, ready to help everybody who needs it. So let's just jump right into it and talk about the types of colleges you might be looking at. 2-year schools versus 4-year schools, and the way you need to apply typically for each. A 2-year school there's not a hard deadline. You really can enroll at any time. Typically, the sooner the better in terms of figuring out financial aid and all that kinds of stuff, and getting your classes ready for next year. But we want you can apply at any time. Probably make sure you're applying by February, as it says it's ideal. They don't need a transcript until after graduation. There are no SAT or ACT scores required. No letters of recommendation. And the great thing about the New Jersey 2-year colleges, the community colleges, qualifying students who are in the top 15% of the class can apply for the NJ STARS program, which is the Student Tuition Assistant Reward Scholarship. And they can go to a community college for free for the first 2 years. And then there is an NJ STARS 2 program. So many of our students have been coming in and asking, do I need to take the SATs? Absolutely, for sure, if you're going to a four-year college. We always encourage trying to take an SAT or an ACT, just in terms of seeing where you stand a lot of times for placement and things like that. But to actually get in and enroll in a community college, you do not need standardized testing. The standardized testing, however, can take the place of a placement test. So if you are going to Bergen Community College and you have a standardized test score, say you did well on the verbal SAT, that may place you out of a 100 level English class, and you may skip right to English 2 or Comp 2. So that's all stuff we can get into, but the main difference between the 2-year and 4-year schools is a lot of that heavy application procedure. 4-year schools, you typically want to apply by their deadline. And there are many deadlines. We'll get into that a little bit later, but October through January is the typical time to apply to a 4-year school. We need to send them your transcripts. Your teachers and counselors send letters of recommendation, and students need to submit application materials and essays and possibly scores. Again, it's a weird year post-pandemic. There are many schools that are still not requiring standardized testing. So there's ways we can find out if you do need to take them or not. So how do you decide on a school? Which way do you go? You know, I like to tell kids to start with, in terms of geography, do you want to go far away from home? Do your parents want you to be far away from home? What's the compromise? You know, some kids will come in and say, I want to go to school in California. Parents say, no, you're not going to school in California. Okay, can we meet somewhere in the middle? Or is that really a possibility? So you talk about geographic location. Are you the kind of person that's going to want a big rah-rah school and go to football games and participate in huge activities? Or are you more into like a smaller school, a medium-sized school? There are probably 14,000, I think I saw in Naviance the other day, 14,000 institutions, private, public, all kinds of places, anywhere from schools that have, 490 students to schools that have 40,000 students. So it's kind of trying to figure out where you might fit, how far away you want to be, what kind of weather you want to be in, public versus private, which has a cost factor that goes along with it. But we generally tell students not to rule something out because it's private and it might cost more, because oftentimes there are monies that are found at private schools that can take that cost down to what it would cost to go to a public school. Think about what you want to do. If you don't know, liberal arts colleges are great. There's something for everybody out there. And again, extracurricular activities, what's available, what other services are offered. Are you going ROTC? Do you want to, participate in a marching band? Do you want to make sure there are community service opportunities? You can find that out by doing college searches, and visiting is a great idea. What they have even more so now than they did before is virtual tours. Virtual tours give you a good feel for what a campus looks like. But once you are accepted to schools, if you can, if it's local, if it's convenient, it's a great idea to go and visit and just see how you feel walking onto a campus. Oops, went the wrong way, sorry. Okay, so again, tour a variety of campuses. There's some really, really great virtual tours and then tours in person. I think a lot of schools are getting back to the in-person tours, but there are still some that do not have them as of yet. You want to look at where am I going to be living? Where am I going to be resting my head at night, right? Where am I going to be eating? Do I need to have a Chick-fil-A on campus? I don't know. So you got to look at all of those things. What's the campus setting? Do I want to be on a farm? Do I want to be in a city? Am I good in suburbia? There are colleges everywhere, and you just have to look and see what they have to offer you. Look at if you are an athlete or if you want to play intramural sports, look at what their athletic facilities look like. You want to play tennis and you want to make sure there's a tennis court on campus. you're a football player, so obviously you're looking at a school where they have a football team. If you want to arrange for an interview, you can certainly do that. Anytime you go and visit and you meet with someone, you should always follow up with a thank you. When you go to meet the reps that come to visit us, it's a great idea to reach out to the person or find out who the rep is for the northern New Jersey area or this part of New Jersey, and you want to go to, University of Southern Florida, and find that rep online, find their name and write to them. They love to hear from students. So encourage your kids to do that. And these are all things that you can talk about with your kids in terms of, we have kids come to our offices and say, I have no idea where to start. This is where you start. You're going to look at where do I want to be and what kind of environment do I want to be in. So we have college rep visits at Teaneck High School. They come constantly starting in October. They will be virtual and in person this year. It is a great way for your child to go and talk to somebody who is a part of that institution, okay? You can check to see which colleges are going to be visiting by looking at Naviance or coming and asking a counselor. Your kids can join in the Google Classroom for the class, and that should say 2022. We apologize for that. Make sure they join the Google Classroom so they keep up to date with everything. But Naviance is a great way to check and see which colleges are coming to visit. So when you go, if you want to go to, say, Howard, and Howard is coming to visit, and you don't know anything about Howard, the best thing to do, you don't know how many people are going to be in that rep visit. And there are times when kids will go and they're one of 3 people. So you want your student to research the school and make sure you know the questions to ask. And, even if you want to ask about, I've heard all kinds of questions in those visits, and the reps don't care what you ask. They're more than happy to answer anything that you want to ask, because certain things are more important for some than others. So if the most important thing to you is, whether they have vegan food on campus, then the rep's going to answer that for you, okay? Make sure that your kids, if you see in Naviance, you get a blast and it says, oh, Rutgers is coming. Well, what do you want to know about Rutgers? Make sure you talk to your child about what they're going to ask in that meeting. Again, for the kids, you put your best foot forward, be attentive, make sure camera's on if it's a virtual meeting. Make sure you are not, lying on your pillow, sleeping on your bed. I'm sure these are all things that you talk to your children about. And then again, follow up with a thank you email. It's always a great thing. In terms of the applications, there are several different types of applications. We mainly, our students mainly use the Common App. If you go to commonapp.org, you can look through that. It's not a difficult thing to help your kids with. We can help them. The Common Application has more than 800 colleges. A lot of the schools that our students at Teaneck end up sending applications to are on the Common App. Then you have the Coalition Application. The Coalition Application for Access and Equity is over 100 colleges. I will say from my experience with using the Coalition Application, the kids get a little bit confused. It's not quite as user-friendly as the Common App, but there might be, we have them listed, there are certain schools that only use Coalition. So you have to look at the schools that your child is applying to and see like what application venue they need to go through. And then there's the Common Black Application, where you can apply to as many schools with one application. And it's a great choice to use if you're interested in an HBCU. And then there are the school-specific applications. I believe Rutgers is still its own application, is not on Common App or anything like that. So you go to the Rutgers website, you apply, and that's it. The most important thing to remember about this, if you're a student or a parent, and you're looking into this, take a look at the schools and see which applications choices you have, because you don't want to be applying through 10 different websites. It's easiest to, like, if you have a bunch of schools and they're all on Common App, why go to the specific school and use the school only app? Unless the exception to that is when a school sends you a priority application, and they may say, in order for us to waive the fee, they'll give you a code, and they send you directly to the website for a specific school. Again, try to complete the fewest application forms possible. And the Common App is great because it has a set of essay questions or personal statement prompts that you can use. And if you pick one, chances are, if you have to apply to another school that's a school-specific application, that prompt that you used for Common App probably will go along with that school as well, okay? The application options, and again, I'm going through this stuff quickly, but it's, this is here for your reference, and we are at your disposal if you need us to answer questions. There's early decision, early action, and regular decision or rolling admissions. So the early decision is usually October 1st, October 15th, generally not after that. And early decision, you find out by December, by mid-December. And early decision is a binding agreement. And when I say binding, it means that you, the parent, your child, the student, everybody has to sign an early decision agreement. The school counselor as well has to sign something. So if you are not 100% sure that you want to go to that school, you do not want to apply early decision, because they are going to, by signing that agreement, you are saying that barring crazy financial circumstances that you cannot commit to, you need to commit to going to that school. That's what you're telling them, that you're going to do everything in your power to go there. And unfortunately, if you break an early decision agreement, it not only looks bad for you, but it doesn't bode well for the school. And there have been times, and this was in the early 2000s, where we had a student apply to a certain school early decision, they rescinded, and we didn't get anybody into that school for like another 5 years. So when you're making the decision to do that, it's not just a decision that's going to affect you and your family, it's going to affect others if you don't follow through. That's early decision. An early decision, you can only apply to one school early decision, and you have to wait to send in your other applications until after you find out what the decision might be. Early action is applying early, and there are early action deadlines that are October 30th, November 1st, November 15th, November 30th, December 15th. All of those early action, you usually find out within 4 to 6 weeks as well. Early action, you can apply, if a school has early action, you can apply to as many early action schools as you want, and it's not binding. And you find out in advance. It's a great thing to do. Regular enrolling is exactly what it sounds. There's a deadline. The deadline might be January 1st, January 15th, February 1st, December 1st, whatever it is, you just apply by that deadline, and you find out. Regular decision, you find out usually in March or April. With rolling admissions, rolling means that they roll in, they roll out the decision. So it's kind of like you will find out maybe a little earlier, sometimes not so much. I've seen everything happen, so it really depends. But rolling admissions is great. The only thing I will say is that if you see a deadline that says the priority deadline, you want to apply by a priority deadline. A priority deadline means that you are going to get priority in receiving scholarship money and things like that. Sometimes when you apply really late, some of those things have already been allocated, some of those monies. So priority means money, and it's nice to apply by a priority deadline. Ooh. Okay, so what you might want to do with your child is create a list of target schools, visit the school's admissions pages, the web pages, see what their deadlines are. And I will say that all of this stuff can be found in Naviance, and Naviance is like one-stop shopping for all things post-high school. You don't have to go anywhere else. You can find all the information you need in Naviance and all the links to everything. So you want to find out the types of applications that the school is accepting, the deadlines, what they require, essays, financial aid forms, all of that. When you're applying, if your kids let you, read over the application, make sure there are no errors, don't leave anything blank. And personal statements, essays, supplements, make sure you can ask your child, or for students, you guys can share with your parents. If it's something that you don't want, that you want to have somebody at school go over, ask your English teacher, ask your school counselor, but don't ask too many people to read your personal statement, because that just gets confusing, and one person says this, another person says that, and then you don't know which way to go. So find someone that you think you can trust with essay editing and ask that person. Okay. Make sure you get your letters of recommendation. Ask your teachers, tell your kids to ask the teachers now if they haven't done so. Ask them in person, send a nice email, follow up, and then you request through Naviance, which we'll get into later. At the bottom there, it says use a spreadsheet, checklist, calendar, whatever works for you. Make a list. When my daughter and my kids were applying, we had a notebook, and you write down everything, and because you have to have a username and password for every application. So you want to write that all down, for FAFSA, everything, and make sure you just keep everything in one place so that you know what you're doing. I've had so many students, I've helped them do things in my office, and then they go and then they forget what they put down as a password. So I've learned that I write it down in a little notebook. So anybody who comes back, I still have it. It's a great thing to do for you, to write things down. Okay, so I will turn it over to Ms. Bettis. And Ms. Bettis, you could just tell me when you want me to click.
Okay. All right, good evening, everyone, again. Welcome again. So the next part that we're going to talk about are the application components. So sometimes the question is, what goes into a decision of how my student, or how I, as the student, get accepted into a college. So we'll talk you guys through what different components there are for the application. You can hit the next slide. So one of them is the transcript. So outside of the application, like Mrs. Taylor was just mentioning, there is the student transcript. The student transcript is going to comprise your students' grades from 9th grade to 11th grade. The reason why it does not have their 12th grade grades yet is because, as we were mentioning, the deadlines for certain schools, grades do not come out until the applications oftentimes are already submitted. So your students' transcripts will have their 9th through 11th grade grades on them, and then it will also include the grades that they are currently taking as seniors. The transcript also includes the unweighted and the weighted GPA, and the weighted GPA is going to include any honors or AP courses that they may have taken throughout the years as well. The official transcripts are always sent by us as the school counselors. So that's important to know. Sometimes when students are applying to schools, they may have a copy of their transcript on their own, but students are not able to send that as their official transcript. So anytime that you may see a transcript is requested, we have to make sure that we get a transcript request form in order for us to process the transcript and have that sent out to the school. Some schools do not require transcripts. Mrs. Diller was mentioning certain schools like Rutgers or Penn State, they have a different application process. So at times you may be wondering if we will be sending the transcripts to schools like Rutgers, but they do something different called the self-reported academic record. So after they complete their application on that school's website or through Common App, it will note if they need to separately go and do the self-reported academic record. And what that is they will manually, pretty much manually input all of the classes that they've taken through high school and all of the grades that they have received for that particular class. Students need to enter each course, each grade, everything will be inputted. And then what will happen is when it is time to submit the mid-year or possibly final transcripts, we will then send it at that time and the school will be able to verify everything then. If you do need a copy of your child, or not child, they're about to graduate high school, your student's transcript, or any students listening, if you need a copy of your transcript, you can see copies on Skyward, or definitely just reach out to your counselor and we can get you a copy of the transcript for you. It's yours, you can have a copy, it just has to come from us in order for it to be officially accepted. Some schools, community colleges do not need transcripts as well, as mentioned. You can hit the next slide. So test scores, the SATs, there are some upcoming dates for the SATs. We have spoken to several seniors over the last few weeks, and you guys some of you will be taking the test this coming Saturday. If you have registered for this coming Saturday, you can anticipate that your scores will be available around October 15th. For anyone that is still looking to take the test again, or maybe you have not taken it yet, the next test date will be November 6th. You still have time for that registration. The registration deadline is October 8th, and you will receive your scores by November 19th. We're mentioning the scores availability because that also is important to keep in mind if you are planning on doing any kind of early action, or if there are certain deadlines on the schools, you want to know when you're going to receive that test score back. Teaneck High School is a test center, although we do not have anything to do with the SATs. So sometimes students or parents may have questions about testing the site that day. We actually are kind of just the four walls of it. So it's important to always just visit College Board's website, collegeboard.org, or you can give them a call for any test specific or any site specific questions. Students should check College Board website for their testing policies, and you can also check your school's policy if they're test optional. So when COVID-19 had hit last year, most schools had actually become test optional. Many schools are still test optional right now, but many schools are requiring tests. So we don't want to assume that a school is continuing test optional. A student may have heard that their friend did not have to take SATs last year, and that's very well possible. But this year, we're encouraging all of the students to take the SATs, to check that school's website, or the ACTs, to make sure that you have everything you need lined up for your application. You can hit the next. ACTs, a couple of upcoming ACT dates as well. The next test date is October 23rd. The regular deadline for registration has passed, but there is a late registration deadline. You can still apply. You have another 2 days. There is just a late registration fee with that. There's also a December 11th test, and that registration deadline is November 5th. For any students that require a fee waiver for either of these tests, you also can reach out to your school counselor for that as well. Fairtest.org is a great website and a tool and a resource to use to find out if the school that you are interested in actually does require the SATs or the ACTs this year. You can hit, oh, and there's a link. We are going to post this, so you will also be able to hit some of the hyperlinks. There's a great link, and you can also reach out to one of us. Sometimes we get the question of the difference between the two testing. The formatting is different. Sometimes if you are more strong in English versus math, sometimes there are opportunities on the ACTs to take a portion of it with a calculator. So there's different nuances for each of those tests, which may be great for you to know which test may be better for you. But most schools across the country accept both tests. Next slide, please. Sending out the score. So test scores is something that is on the responsibility of the student. So outside of the application, the student also needs to make sure that the test scores get to the schools. So some schools, as we mentioned, now accept the self-reporting of the score, so you can input that information, but a majority of the schools still require for the scores to be sent directly from College Board. So that's an important step not to forget, to make sure that you send those SAT scores out to the schools. You can take multiple SAT or ACT tests, and you will just have to note which test it is that you would like to make sure is sent to the school of choice. There is a fee per school. SATs, you can send up to 4 score reports, and anything additional above and beyond the 4 score reports, they do charge $12 for each of the tests. So right below, you can see the 2 websites where you can register and find out information about testing. Most of the time, it will have all of the dates that we mentioned again, all of the details about how to register and where other locations are. We mentioned that for SATs, we are one of the test locations, but there's several locations around our area as well. Next slide, please. Letters of recommendation. This is another element and component to the application. Letters of recommendation is super, super, super important as we had entered this test optional climate. So you have your application, you have your SAT scores, letters of recommendation. This is going to be a recommendation letter that's going to come from your school counselor, and letters of recommendations can also come from your student, your child's teachers. With the school counselors, every student will get a letter from their school counselor. We ask that the students go into Naviance and complete the student brag sheet. And there also is a parent brag sheet that you guys can complete. The parent and student brag sheet is really exactly what it sounds like. It's an area where it's going to ask questions about the strengths of the student, things, extracurricular activities that the student is involved in inside of the school, outside of the school, volunteer work, characteristics. We know many things about the students, but there's also things that we may not know that we want to make sure we include if it's important to the students. So the student brag sheet and the parent brag sheet is a great tool and resource for the counselor to be able to use to write the recommendation letter. We want to have that be one of the first things that the student does as well. Teacher recommendation letter, same thing. This is going to give the student an opportunity to have teachers speak on their behalf about how their experience was with that student. We do recommend that it's best to ask teachers not from the student's current year, because the student hasn't had much time yet with those teachers, unless they have had them in the past. That's a great way to show that there may have been consistency or a rapport that has been built with the student, and just have the teacher be able to speak about the student's growth possibly over the years. It also is recommended to maybe have a teacher that is within the field that the student may want to study. For example, if the student is going to study biology in college, maybe they would want to ask one of their science teachers. If the student has had a teacher multiple years, that also is good, as I mentioned. And also just teachers that, like I said, can speak to the student's growth, that can speak to the student's character, that has really a rapport and can speak personally about the student. The transcript is going to talk about the grades, and these letters of recommendation is really going to touch the hearts and the minds of who this person is behind letters on a piece of paper. You can also have letters of recommendation from outside connections if there is a community service, a volunteer project that the student has worked with. That can be submitted as well, but I would say that that should be in addition to the 2 recommendation letters from the teachers plus ours, not instead of. Sometimes it happens, students are not quite sure who to ask. So please feel free and know that we can help them figure it out and get to who the best person may be. There may not be someone that comes to mind right away, but in fact, we will help them figure out who would be best. Next slide, Ms. Taylor. And then there's the essay or the personal statement. This is another component. This is another thing that's just going to really touch on the personal side of the student, away from the grades and the letters, away from SAT scores. This is a time for the student to really share who they are, challenges they've had, triumphs they've had, how they've grown through it all. Just an opportunity to tell your story behind, again, the grades. Tell, who you are and why you should be accepted into the school. When students go onto Common App, you will find that there are several already pre-written prompts that a student is able to answer for their essay. And then there's also a general prompt that allows you to write more generally about who you are and your strengths as a student. So as Mrs. Taylor mentioned, it is good to proofread it, read it over, have someone look at it as well. Not too many eyes, but just to make sure you're not the only one that is reviewing that work is very important. And making it personal. Again, I can't stress that enough, really making that personal, because the college admissions representatives are seeing hundreds of papers. So it's really, really important for you to start with something in your essay that's really going to catch the eye of someone and make them want to continue to read about who they are, about who you are as a person and as a student. And this is also an opportunity. We've had many students come. We know it's been a tough and challenging time and year through COVID. Maybe grades have slipped during that time. Maybe you have had personal challenges in your family or just different things that have happened. So this is also a time to explain, your story, explain what you may have gone through. So again, people really know this isn't just a piece of paper with a name on it. This is a person. Next slide.
Okay, back to me. So college is just around the corner. This is the THS, Teaneck High School process overview, meaning what we do for your student. So first, the kids apply online, start by checking the application deadlines. We went over all that. This kind of is a repeat, so I'm not going to repeat myself. Before the application can be processed, we need you to, the parents, there's a transcript consent Google form and there's a student transcript request form. So it's all well and good for your kids to run into our offices and say, oh my gosh, Ms. Taylor, I forgot to tell you my NYU application is due tomorrow and I need everything sent out. While I would do everything in my power to get that done, we need preparation time because we have many students. So we ask for a 10 school day grace period, so to speak, for the kids to send us the student transcript request form, make sure the student brag sheet is completed in Naviance. For any school that requires a letter of recommendation, send us that form. We know we have to work on this and get those applications out by that date, and they will be sent by that date. So those kinds of deadlines are really important. Of course, if there's ever a school that you're a student didn't know they wanted to apply to the school and they found out the deadline is very soon, we will work with them, obviously. But, you know, things happen all the time. If a counselor is not in school for the day unexpectedly, and you all of a sudden say you have a deadline, this is why we ask 10 days in advance, 10 school days, okay? And if a student is planning to apply early action or early decision, definitely they should be seeing us now. And again, 10 school days. So the application process, this transcript consent form submitted to the counselor through a parent guardian email address. The student adds the college to Naviance or Common App, we match it, and then everything filters in. We'll get down to that with your kids. The students complete the application online, including their self-reported grades if necessary. They submit the transcript request form. They can do that at any time. They don't have to do that after they submit, okay? But 10 school days before the deadline. And then you guys, the families, you're responsible for sending the SAT and ACT scores. We cannot send scores. And pretty much 90% of the colleges, even if I said, oh, I have the scores, I'll send them, many of the colleges will say we need them officially from College Board. Unfortunately, that's a money-making thing for College Board, and there's probably some agreement somewhere they want you to send through College Board. And then we submit your transcript, your recommendation, the teacher recommendations. We submit it all through Naviance, through eDocs. Most of the schools are electronic document pathways, and that's it. And then we wait. So other important information, Ms. Bettis?
All right. So if your student is an athlete, there is something called the NCAA clearinghouse. So just in case this is something that may not have come up on your radar yet, you want to make sure that you are checking out eligibilitycenter.org. In order for any athlete to be eligible for a Division I or a Division II school, the NCAA eligibility registration has to be completed online. Students also have to be grade eligible, GPA eligible, different things and requirements, classes that they need to take. So it's very important to make sure that everything is in line. As a senior, you have probably heard what those requirements and eligibility is already. But again, just in case this is something that's missed, this is something you want to check out or inquire about. Next slide. Teaneck High School, we are having our second virtual college fair week, November 9th and November 11th. Last year was our first year. This year we are going to do it again. On November 9th, we are going to have schools from all across the country and New Jersey and New York. And on November 11th, it is going to be our HBCU night. So we will have additional information on registering shortly. The information will, again, we're going to hear a lot, Google Classroom, Google Classroom. As seniors, especially make sure you are checking this Google Classroom. Parents, you don't have access to the classroom itself, but we do send out the same information through email and school messenger. So this is an important save the date. If you are thinking about schools, if you're wanting to know about schools, there will be lots of different schools. Last year, we had about 27 HBCUs and 50 combined schools in New Jersey, New York, and across the country. So a really great opportunity to get some questions answered about schools that you may be interested in. Many schools present videos, so it's kind of your first, if you haven't seen these schools, taste of what their campus may look like, what their majors and programs are. And it's your first time to really be able to be in front of that college representative. So you get onto the Google Meet with them, you ask questions, you let them know who you are. Again, they see hundreds of applications. So if this is an opportunity for you to get your name out there and your face be shown, this is a good opportunity to do so. Next slide, please. All right, and as mentioned, Ms. Smith is going to have some additional information about financial aid shortly. We're going to take some questions, so we wanted to make sure you have some resources, but she's going to get in some great depth and give you some good knowledge and tools about what FAFSA and financial aid is all about. So I know we've given you a lot of different information. Sometimes it's like, okay, that's great. Where should I go from here? So just a quick little checklist or next steps for your student. If you have not been in Naviance recently, they need to make sure they're activating their Naviance account. They can get into their Naviance account. Create accounts for Common App if they're applying to HBCUs and are going to use Common Black College App. Create an account for the platforms that you are utilizing. Students should be completing their student brag sheet. Students should be completing their requests for recommendation letters from teachers and inputting your schools I'm applying to into Naviance and Common App. And we will be meeting one-on-one with all of the seniors starting, I believe, Friday. So make sure that you are setting up your meeting with your school counselor. Parents, what can you do? Check your Naviance as well. If parents have Naviance accounts, make sure if you are not able to get Naviance or you haven't logged in, you can reach out to your school counselor as well so we can set up your account. We send out information via Naviance, so it's important to be able to access that as well. Support your students and just have an open conversation about their goals and interests. Ms. Taylor mentioned earlier, you know, what are you looking for in a school? What do they, you know, look for? Just have open conversations about them and understand that this could be an overwhelming process. It could be a very stressful process. There's a lot of unknowns for everyone in the process. So just understanding that it may be a lot and being an open ear and a person that they're able to come to openly and talk to about their concern. One of the biggest things that the parent has on their checklist is the FAFSA and federal aid. So again, Mrs. Smith is going to get further into that, but definitely parents, make sure that you have FAFSA in big bold letters on the things to do list for yourself.
All righty. So we are back. I'm back. I'm gonna do a couple questions. Ms. Taylor, if you can stop sharing your screen, because we have a couple questions before I see Ms. Smith is here from my alma mater, Go Hall, but I want to take a little bit of a break in between the counselors and the awesome information about financial aid. And there are just a couple of questions for the counselors. So one parent did ask or make a suggestion about doing a Naviance presentation for parents. So that is up and coming, because we know Naviance is not only new to some of our students, but very unfamiliar for our parents. There was a question about college application fee waiver. And if you qualify, that is typically for families or students who qualify for free or reduced lunch. If you email your counselor, and you can always copy Ms. Moore, I know she's on, so smoore@tnxschools.org. Between your counselor, Ms. Moore, and even myself, if need be, we can assist you with getting the fee waiver for applications. Some of the other questions, I'm going to throw this to Ms. Taylor. Is a Common App free? I received a fee waiver from one of the schools my daughter plans to apply.
So the Common App, if you have a code for a specific school, you will get that. But Common App, it has a question in the profile. If you qualify for a fee waiver, you check that off, and then we will know on our end, and we will sign your fee waiver for Common App. And you will get all of your Common App school applications for free. Again, though, if you receive a specific code from a school, a lot of times that will come with a special application. If it's for Common App, then you put the code in. It will say, did you receive a school-specific fee waiver?
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. And by the way, Ms. Taylor and Ms. Bettis are both THS alum. So I always want to shout that out. The 3 out of our 6 counselors have walked the halls where your students are walking now. Some a couple moons ago and some more recently, but we are here. That's a little inside joke, but we are here and we are ready to support. Another question. If schools ask for 2 letters of recommendation, is that 1 letter from a teacher and 1 letter from a counselor, or 2 from a teacher and counselor recommendation is separate?
Counselor recommendation is usually separate.
Okay. Awesome, thanks. And how do we get onto Naviance? Parents will have should have link and access to Naviance. Once we post this information out, we will make sure that we send you the link for Naviance. It's also should be listed on our school's website under school counseling. You can either get to that via the high school under departments at the high school, or from the district website under departments school counseling. And last question before we hop into our awesome financial aid portion. Do we have any resources for culinary schools? Either Ms. Bettis or Ms. Taylor.
Resources for culinary schools? No, I mean, the resources basically are, we're the resources. If your child wants to look it up and see what things are all about, we can certainly reach out. They can reach out. You go into Naviance and it will tell you, you do a search for culinary schools. I'm not quite sure when you say resources.
I think that's really it, the search portion of maybe finding culinary schools. Another question, who can I email about the Naviance account if I'm unable to log in as a parent? Again, you can start with emailing your child's counselor. You can always copy Ms. Moore and myself if necessary. I'm Kay Cooper at tnxschools.com. And also, how should they fill in their FDU classes on the Common App? It depends if that's the dual enrollment courses that are taken through the year or the summer middle college courses, but I'll pitch that over to one of our counselors in terms of how do they fill in their FDU classes on the Common.
It asks to, Common App gives you the choices. It tells you to fill in if it's dual enrollment. It gives you that. It's a little bit confusing. So if your kids have questions, they can see us and we can help them through those sections.
Yeah, as they're filling it out, there's a question that they ask, have you taken any outside college courses? So at that point, that is when they can select yes and put if it was dual enrollment.
Awesome. And last question that we have is, how do we access the parent transcript request form? That was actually posted in our Google Classroom, so your student has access to those links. We will also be pushing that out to parents as well, but it's a general Google document or Google form that parents can fill out. And actually, there was one more. Is there a specific website where we can find a general list of scholarship opportunities? Yes. We are posting scholarship opportunities as they come in on the TNC school counseling website. Again, either under departments off of the district website, and we've had a facelift on our website itself, or you can get to the school counseling department website from the high school, but there will be a live link. We update that. Ms. Dockery, who is our scholarships queen, ensures that as scholarships come in, and there have been some that have been coming in, are not only posted in the Google Classroom, which is really important for your student to join the senior Google Classroom, because that's where scholarships and a lot of information is posted, as well as checking the website. So I'm going to stop right there because I know Ms. Smith is on and she's got some great information. So Ms. Smith, thank you for joining us from Go Hall, from Seton Hall University.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. So I will stop and turn it over to you. And if you need to, you should be able to share.
Okay. So good evening, students and parents. My name is Samira Smith, and I am the Assistant Director of Financial Aid at Seton Hall. I will be going over some financial aid information, and hopefully by the end of this presentation, that it will make this process less difficult for you. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so as I mentioned, I will be going over information that you need to know about financial aid. Financial aid basically helps college affordable to you. It consists of loans, it consists of grants, and it consists of scholarships. The main thing is to fill out a FAFSA. The FAFSA is a free application. I know there are some websites out there that do charge you. So if they do charge you, then I would recommend not using that website. So the website to complete the FAFSA is studentaid.gov. When you go to that website, you will have to create an account, which is an FSA ID. The student will need to create one to complete, to start the process of the application. And then one parent will need to also create an account, because that's how you electronically sign the FAFSA at the end of the application process. The FAFSA is renewable every year, and it opens up October 1st. So that will be in a couple of days. So for seniors, you will need to start the FAFSA process on October 1st. It is a good idea to find out which college you're interested in, because every college has a due date as far as the FAFSA. So that will be good to look up that information. And I just wanted to mention a few things, because we do run into some errors or some mistakes that students and parents typically make when completing the FAFSA. So as I mentioned, the website is studentaid.gov. Also, it's important to submit the FAFSA. Whether you think you're going to get financial aid or not, it's very important to submit it. As I mentioned before, to make sure that the parents electronically sign. That's why it's important for the parents to create an FSA ID, because if your parent do not sign it, the application is considered a reject, and the schools will not be able to award you at that time. Also, as mentioned, the students will need to create their own. Another big mistake that we find is that the student will put their information as their parents' information. So for example, we will see on the parent side and the student side the same income information. We will see that the student will say that they have dependents when it's really the parent. So just be mindful that when you're completing the application, that you look to see whether it's asking for parent or student information. Also, another big mistake is that the student will put that they're a graduate student. Unfortunately, you're not a graduate student until you have graduated college with your undergrad degree. So you will put that you are going for your first bachelor's degree as a first-time college student. Also, you can list up to 10 schools on your FAFSA. So don't just list one. It's good to list 10 schools. Also, when completing the FAFSA, you would have to enter the parents' income information. The easiest way is to do the IRS data retrieval tool. So which means is that when you go to the FAFSA, it's going to ask you some questions, and then it's going to send you to the IRS website, which you can have your information from IRS automatically inputted onto the FAFSA so that you don't have to manually input it. Also, it just helps because we know that information is accurate. So once you complete the FAFSA, it goes to their processing center. It goes to Social Security and Homeland, because it does verify to make sure that students are citizens. It also goes to the Selective Service. For male students that's at least 18, it was a requirement where students had to register with Selective Service in order to receive financial aid. This year is the first year that they is not making it a requirement. So eventually they will take that off the FAFSA. Also, because you're New Jersey students, your information will go to the New Jersey Processing Center, which also will show whether you're eligible for any state aid. And then also all the colleges you listed on your FAFSA, they will receive your FAFSA information so that we are able to process for awarding aid. As mentioned, just be mindful of the deadlines, because like I said, each school has a different deadline as to when you have to submit the FAFSA. For an example, Seton Hall's deadline is January 15th. If you are interested in attending, and just make sure that you have all of your information when completing the form. So just for an example, I just want to give you a few things. For federal aid, you can be eligible for a Pell Grant, an SEOG grant. You might be eligible for work study, and also federal loans. I just want to mention that any grants or scholarships, you do not have to pay back. However, if you do take out a federal loan or any type of loan, that you would have to pay that back. So the TAG grant and EOF grant is also through the state. You can be eligible for any university scholarships or need-based aid, which is institutional, and then outside scholarships where you can go to your local church, businesses, or nonprofit organizations. Another way for students to pay for their tuition is federal work study, which means that the student will have a position on campus and the money is federally funded to the school so that we do pay the students. So that's another way that the student can help pay down the tuition. Also, just, be smart when borrowing money. You want to make sure that you choose an affordable college. For scholarships, as I mentioned, outside scholarships, you can go to finaid.org or fastweb.com. Also, I want to mention that when parents or students are borrowing loans, to only borrow what you need, because if you overborrow, we will have to send you that in a refund, but keep in mind that it is a loan, so that you will have to pay that back. So this is basically just a little outline of what an award letter will look like when the schools receive your FAFSA. They will list your direct costs, which will be your actual tuition, fees, and room and board. Your indirect costs, which is books and supplies, transportation, direct loan fees. So that's how we come up with a student's budget. And we come up with the student's budget just so that students don't overborrow if not needed. So basically the cost of attendance will be the direct cost, plus the indirect cost will be the amount it will cost to attend. To be eligible for any need-based aid, it's your cost of attendance minus your EFC. Your EFC number comes from the FAFSA. So once you complete the FAFSA, it will give you an EFC number that goes to the schools, and that's how the schools determine how much aid you are eligible for. As mentioned before, gift aid, which is aid that you don't have to pay back, which are grants and scholarships. And then the self-help aid is work studies and loans. Also, we have some things that students may be confused about as to why they don't submit the FAFSA. My parents make too much. My parents aren't US citizens. If your parents are not US citizens, you can still submit the FAFSA. You would just have to enter zeros and for their social security number. Your grades doesn't affect how much aid. Your credit, that's only if your parents need to apply for like an outside loan. And also federal student loans are not free. Like, as I mentioned, you would have to pay that back. Also, I just want to mention, as I mentioned, you have to complete the FAFSA. You don't know if you qualify for aid unless you submit it. As I mentioned, students will receive federal loans, and that will be in the student's name, not the parents. The only parent loan is a Parent Plus loan that the parents will be responsible for. How can I find more aid? As I mentioned, you can go to your local church. Sometimes parents, their workplace will have scholarships that you can apply for. Also, we have students that ask, well, I'm not living at home, can I be considered an independent student? Unfortunately, according to the federal government, students are not considered independent until you are at least 24 years of age, you're married, you have children. But all of those questions will be asked on the FAFSA. So based on your responses, we will know whether the student is independent or dependent students. Now, with the FAFSA, you do have to use 2 years prior. So when you complete the 22-23 FAFSA, your parents will be using the 2020 tax information. However, if the income has changed or decreased since then, you will still enter your 2020 information. You will reach out to the school to find out if they have a special process. For Seton Hall, we do have a process called a special circumstance, which you would submit your current income, and then we would review it to see if the student will be eligible for more aid. And as I mentioned, We do have veterans benefits. So if your parent is a veteran, they can go to the gibill.va.gov. For private loans, it would be Elm Select. And then for parents, if they would like to take out a Parent Plus loan for the student, they will go to studentaid.gov. And then if anybody has any questions, let's see, let me.
All righty, I'm back. I'm just trying to, there we go, get the camera angles. So lots of information. Wow. You know, it's been a couple moons since I've had to do a financial aid application, but you know, all the information is always great. Let me just check the question. Will the FAFSA login ID information for both student and parents take time to be created for immediate use?
I know in the past when you create an account, it does take a few days to just confirm your identity. So I believe it's about 2 to 3 days. That was previously. I'm not sure if they still have that process going, but it's pretty quick. So I would start doing that now since the FAFSA opens up October 1st. So I would create the account, you know, today or tomorrow.
Awesome, thank you for that. You mentioned listing 10 schools on the FAFSA form. What if a student is applying to more than 10 schools?
Okay, so we've had that in the past. So what we recommend is once the 10 schools receive your FAFSA and they send you out an award letter, what you have to do is you would have to remove a school and then you can add another school. But I wouldn't recommend removing any school until you at least received an award letter from all of those schools.
Awesome, thank you. Does receiving outside scholarships reduce the amount of financial aid a student receives? So in other words, will schools reduce aid by the amount of scholarship money a student receives?
It depends with the donor or the organization. If they specify that the outside scholarships goes towards tuition only and you have all of your aid covering tuition only, then we would have to reduce it. But if they say it goes towards room and board, or if it goes towards your full bill, then no, we won't reduce it. Or if you are at your budget, then we would have to reduce it. So it's different scenarios. It depends on case by case situation.
Awesome, thank you. As a parent, I already have a FAFSA ID. Do I need another one?
No, you do not.
Awesome. So what if I forgot my FAFSA ID? How do I recover it?
When you go into the website, you can click on forgot password or forgot FSA ID, and they'll be able to look it up for you.
Awesome, thank you. So a parent says, I have another student in college. Do I have to fill out a FAFSA? Do I have to fill out 2 FAFSA applications every year?
Yes, you do. So if you have multiple children, the FAFSA is only linked to that particular child. So if you have multiple children, you will have to complete a FAFSA for each child. And it is, you would have to do it every year.
Awesome, thank you. Well, shout out to Ms. Smith. Will Ms. Smith's presentation be available for us to view as well as yours? Yes, so our, the school counseling department's presentation, well, this is being recorded, so it will be up on our YouTube, our school counseling department's YouTube page, probably by tomorrow. I just need time to download it and figure out how to edit it down a little bit, as well as our presentation will be available via PDF. I'm gonna ask Ms. Smith, can you send me your presentation via PDF?
Sure.
Is that permissible? Awesome,
Yes.
so we'll be able to post both. Another great question. What if you're married and file separately? Does it matter which parent fills out the FAFSA application?
So the question is, the parents are married, but they filed separately?
Yes.
It's tricky. It all depends, because if you're technically married, you're supposed to file married, either jointly or separately. So if that is the case, then we would ask that you amend your taxes. However, if you are married and say you separated this year, then you would list the parent that you've basically stayed with for at least 50% of the year.
Okay, awesome. Is there a parent step-by-step process for applying that you suggest we start with? Good questions.
I mean, as far as filling out the FAFSA,
I believe it's probably as far as filling out the FAFSA. I know it kind of walks you through it.
honestly, the FAFSA has gotten easier because when I was doing it, it was on paper. So it's really, really simple. If you use your tax information, it will tell you which line to go to. So it's really, really simple. If not, you can always call FAFSA. They do have an 800 number if you have any questions on how to fill out the form.
Awesome. Do you receive your award letter before your acceptance letters?
It depends on the school. I know with us, especially if you're doing early decision, you will receive your acceptance first. Usually, that's why I was saying, depending on the deadline date to submit the FAFSA, ours is January 15th. So we do wait after that point to send out the award letters.
Awesome, thank you. Are certain schools more conservative, than others with giving money?
As far as federal aid, we're all following the same guidelines because it depends on your EFC. The only thing I can say is it depends on institutional aid because every school is different on how they allot money for students when it comes to institutional money.
Awesome. If a child is not a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident, can that student apply for FAFSA? I know you mentioned that.
If the student is not a resident, no, unfortunately. However, the state of New Jersey do have and I'm sorry, I didn't mention that, but New Jersey has a New Jersey alternative application to where you can apply directly to the state for any state aid. But as far as federal aid, the student must be a citizen, or if they're a non-citizen, they have to have either like some type of proof to show that they are a citizen.
Okay. Do schools base admissions on how much financial aid a student needs? For example, will a student with less need have a better chance for admission?
No, those are two separate. We can't, unfortunately, we can't do that by law.
Okay, thank you. So another great question, was this information presented to students as well? So we will be having student presentations. I'll put a little pitch in for this. The first one that's coming up will be October 12th. We're going to do a 0-period small group presentation. And then we're going to have another one between October 12th and our larger one, which is going to be October 26th, the date of PSATs. And as was mentioned, this information will also be posted in the students' Google Classrooms. And then as they're meeting with their counselors, we'll be reviewing this as well. So we're trying to find multiple ways to get the information out. I also suggested and recommended for students to attend this session as well. But we will get the information to students in multiple ways. Can we contact Ms. Smith, even though she is not a THS faculty member? She's a popular person. The money people are popular.
Certainly, if you have questions, my email address is Samira, SAMIRA .smith@shu.edu.
Thank you so much.
I can also put it in the chat. Just
yep. Awesome. And the other question was, or the follow-up was, the student is a permanent resident. I think that was the follow-up to. If they're
a permanent resident, they will list that on the FAFSA. However, if it's not confirmed by Homeland Security, the school will ask that you provide documentation.
Okay. And believe it or not, it looks like those are all the questions. I'm not sure if there's any other questions that anyone else has, or any other tidbits that Ms. Taylor or Ms. Bettis you may want to add. or Ms. Smith, any tidbits you may want to add?
Just, it's a tough time. Just be patient and reach out if you have questions.
Awesome. I'm also going to, again, just a few reminders. Please encourage your student to join the Google Classroom that is for specifically the school counseling or guidance department. That's where all this information will be shared for your student, as well as Naviance. The students should be logged on to Naviance. We went over that a couple times last year, and we're gonna, again, remind students this year to make sure that they're logging on to Naviance. Also, you know, in terms of the question about scholarships, not only do we post them in the Google Classroom, but there will be a live Google document that Ms. Dockery maintains with all the scholarships as they come in. And we've actually started to receive some scholarship information for students to start to apply for. Our rep visits will begin in October, both in person and virtual. So we're just trying to make sure we have enough opportunities for students to interact with our with various college representatives. Obviously, you know, if you're going out to visit the various college universities, that's awesome. If you're doing it during school time, just make sure you check in with attendance. So you're allotted, I want to say 2 to 3. I don't remember off the top of my head, college visits that don't go count towards your attendance, but always check in with the senior class dean, who is Gregory Cooper, regarding your attendance and all things school. There was another question. After the application process, is there any other things seniors should be preparing for college-wise? In general, so I was actually having a great conversation with 2 students yesterday after school, and you know, there are students who plan on sending their stuff in early, and you know, and are pretty secure in where they want to go. And they said, "Now, Ms. Cooper, we're just going to chill and slack off." I said, "Well, remember the fine print. All students, we just want to make sure that you continue to maintain that that awesome academic level of excellence that you did prior to applying, because that fine print is the acceptance is pending successful completion, which we all will complete, but we just want to make sure that the students stay on top of their academics." And also a tidbit from one of the other counselors, as we were talking about some things to share out, is that while the application, Mr. Book said, although the application process is one part, don't forget scholarship applications are an entity as well. So while you may have clicked submit on the college application portion, don't forget to keep your eye out for scholarships. There are merit scholarships based on your academic merit. There are need-based scholarships. There are scholarships out there for just about anything you can think of. So that I would say after the application process is something that seniors really need to make sure that they're, you know, staying on top of, just monitoring the scholarships as they come in. After applying, are we allowed to send first marking period grades if your GPA goes up? So transcripts, I'll share some of the key points for transcripts to be uploaded into Naviance. And then as I believe Ms. Taylor mentioned earlier, we send things off via eDocs once it's uploaded to Naviance. So initial transcripts will be uploaded on October 15th. That will have your grades from obviously freshman to junior year, as well as the classes that are in progress. So your schools can see what classes you're enrolled in. Your mid-year transcript will be uploaded into Naviance. I believe the second marking period report cards go out February 7th, around there. Your mid-years will go out February 8th. So the day after the report cards are posted, your mid-year transcripts will be uploaded to Naviance, and then your end of the year transcripts. So other than schools that may want a self-reporting, they are going to want the official transcripts, which are generated from us. Okay. I'm not sure if there's any other questions, but we'll hang around for a little bit. I am going to add, I'm going to drop in the chat a survey. If you can just take a minute or two to fill out the survey for this evening to give us some feedback on, you know, on this evening's presentation, as well as any other presentations or information that you may, you know, want us to put together for you. That's great. Feedback is important for us. And other than that, thank you so much for hanging with us tonight. With hey, Miss Bettis, is that the other counselor in training? We're working from home. We are working from home, and we are family. My children are here too. But either case, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Miss Taylor and Miss Bettis, thank you for all the things that you do. Not just, I'm going to shout you out, not just this evening, but really holding us down in the department. We are an awesome department. We love working with our students and our staff, and we have fun. Because that's what it's really about. So please feel free to reach out to your school counselor. And I say it all the time, you can email me, you can copy me on an email. We work together just to make sure that we are supporting our students, because they're all mine as well, right? So just let us know what it is that you need, and we're here for you. So I'm gonna just drop the survey in again. If you can just take some time, a minute or two to fill it out. I'm going to scroll to see if we have any more questions. Oh, anonymous attendee. You're welcome. They said thank you for this. You're welcome. You're welcome. That warms my heart. And I'm sure I can speak for Miss Taylor and Miss Bettis as well. I'm trying to see if any survey says you need permission to access. Did I do it? Uh-oh. There I go again, Miss Bettis. Me and my surveys. I thought I'd give me 1 second. It should be. Some people are filling it out, so I'm not sure why it says you would need permission to access it. Can one of you just log on to it? Let's see. Let's see if that one works.